Hello, my lovely listeners. I'm Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns. Welcome to this episode of Real Health and Weight Loss. Gorgeous ones, before we get into this next podcast, I just wanted to tell you that by popular demand, the No Sugar Challenge is back. The 7-day No Sugar Challenge gives you a wonderful program which includes recipes, includes advice on how to feed your family sugar, and all the things that you need to do to be able to stop or at least reduce your sugar for 7 days. The challenge starts November 21st with a 2-day lead-in, but you can buy the program now and get yourselves ready. Just go to our website, rlmedicine.com/no sugar, all one word, all lowercase. See you there, gorgeous ones. Brett, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me on today.
I would love to know how you discovered low carb.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't because I was taught it in medical school, residency, or fellowship. That's for sure. In fact, I was taught the opposite, right, as most doctors were. But I was fortunate enough to, be frustrated with my practice, to be frustrated with the lack of impact I was having by trying to help people focus on lifestyles within the realm of cardiology rather than just prescription medications. And because of that frustration, I was sort of driven to do something different. So I started Boundless Health, which, was sort of like a boutique practice to really try and build one-on-one, spending more time with them. And I was lucky enough that the health coach I was working with at the time was very knowledgeable about ketogenic diet. So through working with him, to introduce me to the world of low carb and keto, which once I started looking into it, I actually got really frustrated and upset because the evidence was there. There were studies and literature and science showing efficacy of low carb and keto diets, but yet it was really never discussed or taught. And that really charged me, especially then once I tried it on myself and then started trying it on patients and said, look, I get it that there's not one diet for everybody, and this may not be a diet for everybody, but this absolutely needs to be something clinicians know about and understand so that they can use it with the right patients to really help them, because it helps in ways that I've not seen anything else help for certain subsets of patients. And that's pretty dramatic. And to have that type of a therapy swept under the rug just really really tore at me. So I sort of made it my mission to really get this word out there, not just to the everyday public and individuals, but to clinicians as well. But it's important for both spectrums to really understand it, because one, not every clinician is going to know about it, but for the patients to bring the information to the clinicians and their success stories to the clinicians is so powerful. And then at the same time to try and target the clinicians with education and, continuing medical education programs and whatnot so that they understand it, really bringing those two worlds together. So that's sort of my little circuitous route to where it got me today. And then I was lucky enough to meet up with the crew at Diet Doctor and come on board with them as the medical director, where I've been for almost 3.5 years now. So it's been a great journey.
Absolutely. And what a massive platform Diet Doctor is, really, isn't it, for spreading the word? And I read your articles and they're fantastic. So,
thank you.
Lovely listeners, I would definitely be recommending that you head over to dietdoctor.com for some actual evidence-based articles and advice on how to manage a low-carb lifestyle.
As with anything, when things, sorry to interrupt, as with anything, when things get popular, they can sort of take on a life of their own, and then it can become very confusing as to what to believe and where to turn. So we hope at Diet Doctor that we're that place to turn to for reasonable and evidence-based advice that's going to help people and is well vetted. Yeah, so hopefully we fill that role.
I totally agree. And you're right about the kind of the concept of the popular thing. We see it now in processed food companies who are making, low carb pizza bases and they've got keto splashed across it, or supplements the supplement industry is one of my biggest bugbears, because people think it's natural and it's going to be good for them. And it's just an unregulated $1 trillion industry for which 95% of it is quackery. But that's just my little soapbox in there.
No, I agree with you completely. I mean, I think if you can say one thing that's is currently the worst thing about the keto movement, so to speak, or the potential downfall of the keto movement would be the infiltration of processed foods and the infiltration of keto junk foods. You can see the same thing about vegan, right? Whole foods, plant-based vegan diet is very different than a vegan diet based on all the vegan junk food that's out there. And the same for keto. We're seeing the exact same thing starting to happen in keto, which is unfortunate. And, it always comes down to whole foods, however you want to say it, but whole foods, low carb, whole food, keto diet is definitely a different approach than using all the packaged and processed junk foods that are out there.
Absolutely. In fact, at Real Life Medicine, we use the phrase low carb real food.
Mm-hmm.
And
I like that.
Yeah, and we do a little hashtag of LCRF, because I think also part of the reason that people get confused perhaps or the messaging gets mixed up is that people focus on the high fat component of LCHF or keto. And I think I've certainly seen it, and I can see it in Diet Doctor. There's been an evolution focusing a lot more on protein as a macronutrient rather than necessarily high fat. Is that how you're approaching things?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair statement. For keto, you just have to reduce your carbs. That's what makes a diet ketogenic. And then the rest is trying to figure out how do you optimize your nutrition within that setting. And to optimize your nutrition, I really think you do need to focus on protein. Now, the question is, what does focus on protein mean? To some people, they think that means 40% of your calories from protein. Other people think it means, maybe 20, 25%. And the key is it's not 10% or 15%, which is sort of what the average American is eating right now. It's higher than that, because protein can be very satiating, certainly up to, 25% or that 1.6 grams per kilo range, depending on how you want to look at it. Protein can be very satiating, and it's what you need for healthy weight loss. We don't just want to lose weight, period. We want to lose fat mass while maintaining lean mass. And for that, gosh, protein is so important, as is some form of exercise. But interestingly, when we've done that, one of the pushbacks we've gotten is like, how can you now promote low fat? But it's different, right? Saying a ketogenic diet with 80% fat versus a ketogenic diet with 60% fat, neither one of those is a low-fat diet by any means. Fat is still a great nutrient to help you enjoy your meals and to add to your food. And if you're burning fat, to use it as energy. But just like anything, too much energy can lead to weight gain or stalls of weight losses. So it is important to sort of regulate the fat intake. But it's very different than saying 20% fat, low fat type of diet. It's just saying prioritize protein, reduce your carbs, and then if you add the fat for enjoyment of your meals and if you need more calories. I mean, it doesn't have to be much more complicated than that, really.
No, I love that. And I think that, sometimes people get overwhelmed by the complexity of how to, I guess, formulate a low carb or ketogenic diet. And for some people, they love that. Like some people are mad on data and tracking and calculating and spreadsheeting. And there's lots of, I guess, programs and websites and apps that help people do that. But for other people, and I find this particularly for women who have done dieting, and listeners, you can't see my air quotes, but they've done that. They've done calorie counting, they've tracked, they've journaled. They're almost traumatized by that concept. And so to ask somebody to do that again can be sometimes really difficult for them.
Yeah. What I've found, because I still work with a number of patients one-on-one, the engineers love to track. If they're engineers, they're just going to go to town on the data. But I think you're right. People who have had that diet experience don't want anything that feels like a diet experience again. And tracking and counting and logging and monitoring and weighing, that is the diet experience. And the anxiety and the stress sort of builds up with that. And that is exactly what you don't want. And that's part of the beauty of low carb, is that the rules are very simple, right? Just cut out the carbs, make sure you're getting enough protein, a couple fistful per meal or a couple hand palms full per meal, and add the fat to enjoy your meal, and you're done. Very simple. Or if you're not keto or low carb and you just want to eat, higher satiety, trying to eat foods that are going to fill you up more, then you prioritize protein, you fill in with fibrous veggies, and add the fat to enjoy your meals. Like if you can live by those priorities without having to count and measure and just sort of have that concept. It's a much more simple approach than counting and measuring for most people. Now, a lot of my engineer patients would hate it though. They're like, oh, no, I need to know, which is so funny, right? I mean, they're just two very different polar opposites, but each one works for them.
Absolutely. And I think you've just hit the nail on the head there with actually tailoring or speaking to the patient or the client as to where they're at, like meeting them at their point and trying to convince an engineer to just sort of freeball it, if you like. Don't know if that's a bad word, but anyway, it is, we're using it, is problematic, and trying to convince somebody who's traumatized by diet culture that neither of those are going to work. So yes, meeting them where they're at is wonderful. Oh, I love that. So I guess with your epiphany back in, last decade of recognizing that, and I suppose for you, Americans' health overall, it's going down the gurgler, and we're seeing, Australia mimics America. We're seeing more and more obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and all the other things that go with that. What is your first step when someone comes to see you, particularly, if they're feeling like they're, I have lots of people, and you probably do too, where they go, I think it's too late for me, doc. I think I'm done. What's your step there? How do you give them some hope?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I mean, the first is, of course, convincing them that they do have hope and showing them that they have hope. So whether it's other people's testimonials or just, telling them about some of the patients I've seen who have turned it around, and, just giving them some element of hope, but also giving them an initial victory, some sort of immediate victory, because they may have a long-term goal. But if it's going to take years to get to their long-term goal, a lot of people are going to get frustrated and give up at the first negative turn. But if you can show them stepping stones on how they're going to get to that long-term goal, and each stepping stone is its own short-term goal, then that can really inspire them to continue on their course and to get more motivated. And I think that's something that people can fall into the wrong trap. Like we hear so much about reversing type 2 diabetes. We hear so much about people losing 100 pounds. And they're like, wow, that's what I want to do. But if at, 3 months you're doing great, and then at 5 months things stall, you're like, see, I knew it. I knew it wouldn't work, and I'm never going to get there. Yeah, we got to avoid that trap. So that's where I like these stepping stones, whether it's, initial, not even weight loss, but just like, okay, not having to snack, during the day. Boom, victory, right? Or being able to now walk a little bit further than you did before. Boom, victory. Whatever those little victories are, build those in so that they see their progress. Because as humans, we're sort of hardwired to see the negative a lot more than the positive, and hang on to the negative more than the positive. So it also helps to chart, to say, look, you look back when you're like, oh, I'm so frustrated, it's not working. Like, well, let's look back where you started 6 months ago. See, you started here, now you're here. So you may feel stuck, but look at that progress. I think that's so important, because that's just human nature, right? And we don't learn that in medical school, right? We don't learn that in residency and fellowship. And that human behavior part of it is just like felt to not be important, or not to be taught, or not our job, or whatever it is. But it's absolutely our job, and we have to be good at it to help our patients succeed.
I love that. I totally love that, because as you know, I love behavioral medicine and helping, I guess, translate, complex theory into real life behavior so that it becomes relatable. And I think in medicine we're still very good at the complex theory, and talking to somebody about the theory of things, and you start talking about complex things like gateways and some of those words that we love to use, code chains and all that sort of stuff. It just frightens people, and I think frightening people is really unhelpful.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's easy to do, unfortunately, in medicine. And I guess I'm as guilty as anybody of speaking badly about, medicine and the way it's gone. But look, if I'm having a heart attack, or if I need a valve replaced in my heart, like, the technology and the advancements in medicine are phenomenal. And absolutely, I want the most experienced and knowledgeable person, backed by the tools and the interventions and the medications needed in that situation. But boy, do we drop the ball when it comes to managing chronic disease. And that's where I think we do scare people more than we help people in general as a medical community. And so it's sort of the tale of two medical systems, I think, and the polar opposites.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I love that, because what you've kind of said is that, and I think people can fall into this trap of all or nothing in lots of things that we do. But, I see lots of people who don't want to take any medications ever. And the thing is that sometimes you do need things, and, optimizing your lifestyle is the best way to have minimal medications, but it doesn't always guarantee no medications. Do you find some of your, and again, I'm sure that people seek you out in the same reason they seek me out for looking for lifestyle, but then you've got to actually sometimes say, you know what, sometimes medications are okay.
Yeah. It's funny, when I go to cardiology conferences, I'm sort of the black sheep who promotes lifestyle over drugs. And when I go to sort of low carb and nutrition conferences, I'm a little bit the black sheep who still uses drugs rather than just lifestyle, right? Like I don't quite perfectly fit in either one, but yes, that does happen a lot. Patients come to me and they say like, my doc wants me on a statin, my doc wants me on these, my blood pressure, I don't want to take them. And then we do our intake and I'm like, look, you definitely can improve things with lifestyle, and in certain situations, medications have a role. So frequently, statins are the most common one I get all the time. And we really do have to differentiate secondary prevention versus primary prevention, higher risk versus lower risk. And there are things we can do to better define that risk more than just checking what your LDL is, right? So that's really important. But we still have to factor in that medications do have a role in certain situations. So absolutely. I mean, I don't think we can be absolutely dogmatic on either side of the equation. But if you say statins are overprescribed, and it's easy for me to say statins are overvilified, and probably the same for most medications. And the answer lies somewhere in the middle. But the key to finding that answer is better determination of what your risk is and your risk benefit ratio is for you as an individual. Because when we look at these studies of 10,000 people, 100,000 people, this is general public, most of whom are eating a high fat, high carb, high caloric diet, most of whom have some metabolic dysfunction. That's who the majority of these patients are in these drug trials. So it's trying to take that data and apply it to you as an individual. And frequently it's not a one-to-one correlation. So it's like, okay, what else can we add to bring this data closer to what we know about you as an individual?
Yes, 10,000 times over, because it is trying to take big trials, and public health measures are sometimes not helpful for the individual. And I think that we can look at something as simple as BMI for that.
Yeah.
And I'd love it if you could perhaps explain to our listeners about BMI and what it actually is, because so many people go, I'm still above my BMI.
Right.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on BMI?
Yeah, and I think you alluded to it. For a population basis, on a study of hundreds of thousands of people, BMI tends to track well with, you could say, over fatness. And that's the difference that you want to make. Is your elevated BMI because of fat tissue and adipose tissue, or is it from lean tissue like muscles and bones? And for the general population, it tracks pretty well, not ideal, but pretty well with over fatness. But when you're sitting across from one specific individual, BMI is worthless. I would never even check BMI in a patient. I want to know what's your waist circumference, your waist to height ratio, some determination of body fat percentage, whether if you can get a DEXA scan or a hydrostatic weight, or even just one of those bioimpedance scales, some better measurement than just what is your number of pounds when you step on a scale. That's so much better for an individual than BMI. But like you said, for big population studies, BMI tracks fairly well, but that's not what I want to know when I'm working on a patient. And for individuals listening, I don't think they should care what their BMI is. They should want much better data and information about themselves than just BMI.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we are often saying that the scales, like just standard scales, they're such a rudimentary tool as well. Like they really, they're like the equivalent of the temperature. They're just a one data point, but they don't actually tell you anything about your health. They're just a number.
Yeah. So I finally found a good use for my scale. My scale has been sitting in my closet for, I don't know, a year or more, and I haven't used it. And my son was going off to sleepaway camp. And we packed this huge bag for sleepaway camp, and it had to be less than 50 pounds to get on the airplane. So I'm like, I finally found a use for my scale. Let's put new batteries in this and use. That's what a scale is good for. Not for telling me about my health at all, but whether my son's bag is too heavy to get on the airplane. That's what a scale is good for.
I love that. That's hilarious. Absolutely. And good. And I guess that just keeps adding to our thing where we say to people, just pop the scales away. They're not your friend. They're not always helpful. I know people sometimes hop on them thinking it's going to be motivating for them, and a bit like your stepping stones. They go, oh, good, oh, good, oh, good. But then if they go up, they go, oh, bad. And then they stop doing what they were doing. So
yeah, if you have a hard workout and you get some swelling, that can increase your weight, right? You hang on to a little fluid that increases your weight. Got nothing to do with your progress in your health. It could actually be a good thing, right? So yeah, it can be a trap that people fall into and put too much faith in, for sure.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So do people come and see you in your clinic, or tell me how you work these days?
Yeah, so my practice is it's all online. It's a telemedicine practice, and I'm licensed in 7 states here in the United States. So anybody in those states can see me as a patient. It's not a full-time practice. My day job, so to speak, is the medical director at Diet Doctor, but I never want to give up clinical practice. I just love working with people one-on-one too much. So I still have that practice so I can see people and, really focus on this intersection of lifestyle and mainstream medicine and really help people better define their health and their cardiac risk and what might be the best lifestyle for them. And, what's interesting, I'm sort of known as the low-carb cardiologist and the keto cardiologist, but for as many people as I put on a keto diet, I also take people off keto diets too. I wouldn't say it's the one diet for everybody. And I think that's an important message that we all have to stick to, that we can't be in a bucket and this is our tribe and this is what we apply to everybody. Just like, I think that's what got us into this mess in the 1980s with the low-fat diet is the one diet for everybody. Well, I don't want to fall into the same trap that a low-carb or keto diet is the one diet for everybody either. Yeah.
Oh my God, you are speaking my language, because I think what happens is that it's very easy to be dogmatic about your way. Your way is the right way. Everyone should do your way. It's the only thing that's, suitable for everybody. And it becomes easy because you just bang the same drum morning, noon, and night. Being in the middle is not nearly as sexy or controversial. And so, controversy is what sells, everything in the world. That's why suddenly reality TV is so controversial. And being a moderate, if you like, seems a bit boring, but I actually think it's the key to being really to be able to help the majority of people.
Yeah, and it seems like, I don't know, like a prime example is this big debate and battle about the energy balance model or calories in, calories out, or the carbohydrate insulin model, which one is right. And they're both right and they're both wrong, right? Like it's not one explanation of why people gain or lose weight. You want to eat fewer calories than you expend to lose weight, but you want to do it in a way that is going to improve your body's hormone responses. That's going to do it in a way where you're not hungry, and do it in a way that's going to give you the nutrition and the protein that you need, right? So it's not just simple math equation, but it's also not just simple reduce your carbs and do whatever you want and you're going to be fine. It's not that simple, but people like simple answers, and they like to be on the edge of things, I guess you could say. And yeah, I agree with you. Trying to be more nuanced and kind of in the middle of things is not nearly as exciting for a lot of people, but it's where a lot of the accuracy and success, I think, lies.
Yes. I often feel like I need a badge that says I'm a loud and proud omnivore, because I'm not carnivore and I'm not vegan, and and so suddenly I'm a bit boring. But I also think that's, for me, again, you can use the other diets in certain people and they suit certain people. So it's not that I'm not supportive of those, but it's not who I am and what I like to promote. And sounds the same for you.
Yeah, it is. And look, I mean, I can think of 2 patients I've seen this week, and one I helped start on a carnivore diet with the idea being he was going to be on it for a few months, and then we would start introducing foods back. At his checkup, he's like, I feel the best I've ever felt in my life. I have so much energy. This is great. All my numbers are better. I don't want to change. So, why would I tell him to change at that point, right? Just because I have some preconceived notions of what the right diet is? No, I mean, I think he's found his diet. And then the other one is almost exactly the opposite. He came to me already eating a plant-based diet. And so we were making a couple changes with the thought of maybe adding simple changes without adding meat products. Same thing. He's feeling so great and doing so well. maybe he doesn't need to add meat products, right? Like if that's what works for him and fits his belief system and his ethics, why would I want to change that if it's working? And then you have to define what working means for each person, of course. So they all can work. Now, I would say the majority of the people are going to do very well with an omnivore diet that's relatively low carb and at least moderate protein, right? Like those are the concepts that I think are going to fit most people. But again, it's not going to fit everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you alluded to the formula before, and we use it all the time, which is pick some protein, pick some non-starchy vegetables, add a bit of fat if the protein's lean, and then add some flavor, which is herbs and salt. And it's really simple.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated.
No. So as a cardiologist, what are your kind of 5 top tips for living well and looking after your heart health?
Ooh, good question. Good question. Well, I mean, I think eating whole foods is a great starting point. Moving your body regularly, including resistance training, is fantastic. Prioritizing sleep is also very important, something that we don't do nearly enough in our busy run culture. Stress, acute stress can be good. Chronic stress that you just let keep building up is a danger for sure. And having strong connections with friends and loved ones. Those are, if I was going to pick 5 sort of main topics that people need to address, those are the 5. Now, you can't always address all of them at once. That's intimidating. That can be overwhelming and make you want to throw your hands up and say, I can never do this. But, having those as goals for where you eventually want to get, and again, building stepping stones along the way, addressing each one individually is a great way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it. And you're right. I mean, it does. Sometimes you feel like you've got to go through this list. Right. I've got to get up. I've got to get up and see the sun, get outside, do 10 minutes. I've got to go brush my teeth and make sure I floss. I've got to meditate for 10 minutes. I've got to connect with some people, and it feels like this giant list of too many things to do. And so people do nothing.
Yeah. And you sort of give up. And look, I mean, you can say a lot of things about the mental health of our society right now, and I think it is trending in the wrong direction. And there's quite a lot of despair and depression in American society for sure, and I think globally as well. So people are a little more prone to maybe giving up and just seeing the negative in things and not wanting to try if they're not going to see immediate results. So I think that's important too, especially with social media. Again, you'll see posts about people doing all these different things, and you're like, I got to do it all. But it's difficult to do it all. So I see that as part of our job too. Again, getting back to the behavioral aspects of things and having to be able to understand those as clinicians and how to communicate that to our clients, that taking little pieces at a time rather than trying to, one big bite of the whole thing is probably the better path to success.
Absolutely. And, on top of that, removing blame and guilt, because people feel bad.
Yeah.
They want to do, air quotes again, the right thing. And if they don't do it, they then feel guilty or feel ashamed of themselves. And I'm sure you've heard this phrase, and I hear it all the time, which is, I can't believe I let myself get to this point.
Yeah.
And that's their self-talk. It sort of permeates their whole mind. Like it's part of the health thing, isn't it? Of just having a beautiful, healthy mind.
Community is at fault for a large part of that as well, because there has been a lot of blaming, sort of implicit, maybe not the doctor saying it's your fault, but this sort of just implicit in the message was that, well, you're overweight and you have diabetes because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. That message, which is just so wrong, has really sort of been the default message for decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's 2 things to that. One is that many people have had the wrong information or information that wasn't helpful to their particular circumstance.
Yes.
And the second thing is just this idea that, food is used in our society for so many things other than nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's used to celebrate, it's used for reward, it's used to mitigate sad feelings, etc. And that's well and truly populated on commercial television and advertising. At the moment there's an ad going around in Australia for a chocolate bar, and there's a mum and a little boy sitting on a bus, and there's a girl sitting on the bus just in the seat next to them, and she's crying. So the boy reaches into the mum's bag and gets out a block of chocolate and gives it to her. And, That in itself, everyone goes, oh, what a lovely ad. But that really just exemplifies exactly what is going on, that people use food to soothe because we've been told to do it and taught to do it. But then when they develop problems from this, then they're blamed. And that's, I don't know, that's just wrong.
Yeah. Sugar equals love.
Yeah.
No, not really. It doesn't.
No.
But marketing wants you to believe that.
Absolutely. Brett, so if people want to read more about you or find you or look for your information, how do they contact you? What's the best way?
But the best way is probably through Diet Doctor, dietdoctor.com or our Diet Doctor YouTube channel. That's where most of my content is. I usually do about 2 videos a week on our YouTube channel, plus a podcast every other week. And then we have, dietdoctor.com just has hundreds of different educational guides, depending on the topic you're interested in, that I've either written or medically reviewed. So that's a great place to start. And then for those in the US who want to work with me as a patient, lowcarbcardiologist.com is probably the best place to start there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got a book. Are you still selling that book? Because that was awesome.
Yeah, so that book's on Amazon, Your Best Health Ever. I wrote that, maybe 5 years ago now. It's in desperate need of an update, I think, but that's not happening anytime soon. But a lot of the information is still very useful, and just a way to put everything down in one place. Yeah.
When I was first starting in low carb world, I bought that book because it was really good. So
thank you.
I know I actually bought the hard copy of it too. So it's like, so I often lend it to people but I definitely make sure I keep it back. So there we go.
Great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure our listeners have had, just consolidated their knowledge and just really now have an extra resource to go to. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
So, my lovely listeners, that ends this episode of Real Health and Weight Loss. I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
And I'm Dr. Mary Barson. We're from Real Life Medicine. To contact us, please visit rlmedicine.com.
And until next time, thanks for listening. The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualized medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.